Hello Harpernesian and welcome back to my channel. Today, I am going to be speculating potential ideas for what the upcoming Dead by Daylight movie being developed by Blumhouse Studios could be. Firstly, I have a few ideas about what the movie should not be and why. Then, I'll reveal my own idea of what I personally would like to see. So, without further ado, let's get started. I think one idea that we have a lot of potential of seeing is a story where a group of characters try to unravel the mystery of the entity in our world, maybe investigating the mysterious fog-related disappearances that have been happening around the world. Basically, this idea for the movie would be set in our world, following people trying to figure out where the survivors we play as went, and maybe near the end actually seeing the realm itself with a few of the killers in a trial. Essentially, this is the budget option. This movie would not require as big a budget as would probably be needed for other ideas, being set mostly in the real world with the entity stuff only happening later. However, that is the furthest thing from a Dead by Daylight movie that I would ever want, because personally, when I think of Dead by Daylight, I think of the trials, where a killer is hunting down a small group of survivors inside the entity's realm. While I think it works within the game's lore, I think the movie should be a lot more action-packed and have a dynamic narrative that fully captures the suspense and horror that make Dead by Daylight, and I think this idea doesn't do that. Essentially, to fully capture Dead by Daylight, I think you're going to need a big budget, which, unfortunately, does bring me to my next idea of what you should not be doing in a Dead by Daylight film. One idea that I have seen shopped around by some fans is that the Dead by Daylight film should be an Avengers Endgame style horror extravaganza. Basically, picture all of your favorite killers and survivors in a colossal, blood-soaked horror film on screen at the same time, with cameos, showcasing all of the big licenses. I'm talking about getting as many of those licenses in as you can, showcasing them here. Evil Dead? Check. Elm Street? Check. Alien? Check and check. It would certainly be a spectacle, and it might even be fun, but isn't really what filmmakers should be going for an adaptation of Dead by Daylight. In my opinion, no, I don't think it should be going in that direction at all. I think the idea of so many iconic franchises coming together is very tempting. However, I don't think that should be the focus of a Dead by Daylight movie, because honestly, I think the MCU has kind of soured that idea. I think that the heart-pounding tension that defines Dead by Daylight should not ever be overshadowed by MCU style, "Oh, look, it's that one guy from that thing" cameo fest. I think focusing on that over a good story would ruin any potential that the film has. I think above all else, it's most essential to attain that essence of what makes the game so terrifying. To go a bit off script, I think that the biggest thing that Dead by Daylight has going for it in terms of fear factor comes from the existential Lovecraftian dread that comes from living inside the entity's realm. As I will touch on later, when you go through a trial, canonically speaking, your character, if you die, does not remember dying. All they remember is the fear and the horror of dying, which I think is pretty terrifying. Throughout the game, your character, whenever you die, is basically slowly losing parts of themselves, and eventually they are going to go to the void and just be nothing. So, to slowly get back on track, in my opinion, to make a good Dead by Daylight movie, you need to make a movie that touches upon those fears and that concept, because I think that is what would make a Dead by Daylight film very unique. Now, let's move on to what I think the Dead by Daylight movie should be in an ideal world. Essentially, I think that the film should be set in the entity's realm throughout, with at least a lot of the film being set up with a framing device of a group of people sitting around a campfire in the realm, sharing what they can remember. I think this would be a fun way to mirror how the game works, where at the beginning of each game, every player is just waiting around the campfire, waiting for the next trial to start, which I think could be a fun parallel. You could have characters sitting around the campfire like Meg, Jake, Claudette and Dwight talking about how they got there, the killers they remember going up against in the trials, and more. I think that would be a good way to feature characters like Trapper, Nurse, and Huntress during these little segments where one of the characters is describing a trial and we can briefly see those slashers at work. However, to contradict myself from before, I do think there is one licensed killer that should cameo in the movie for at least a brief sequence, and that killer is Michael Myers. It is no secret that licenses are a big draw to Dead by Daylight, and though as said earlier the film should avoid becoming a cameo-filled mess, I think the film would actually suffer for not including Michael Myers. While I don't think that they should be a main killer, I think an extended sequence during a trial, a character's recounting, is all he would really need to show off the kind of threat that the entity has in their service. Michael Myers coming to DVD was a turning point for the game, so in my opinion, it arguably made the game what it is today, so having him show up in the movie would be a nice tribute to the character and what he did for Dead by Daylight as a whole. Last, to add to this, realistically speaking, Blumhouse has a pretty good relationship with the owners of the Michael Myers rights, so him being in the film is an easier get than other licenses. As for who I think would be a cool main killer, one that's focused on the most, I would actually pick, and please don't flee me for this, Legion, and more specifically, Susie. The reason for this is because I think while all of the characters are around the campfire, there should be one person there who seems like they belong but they don't, and that would be Susie, who's actually a killer and member of Legion. With her affair, I think it would be a no-brainer that Jeff Johansson would be one of the other survivors that are there, and the reason for that is twofold. For one, Susie actually knew Jeff when he was a teenager, and in fact, it's kind of implied that they were friends. So, it would be interesting for Jeff, a full-grown adult, to meet Susie, he was still somehow a teenager. This could also go a long way to show how the realm is its own area, and that the passage of time literally means nothing there. And two, Susie being there the whole time would add tension and a great twist later when the third act trial starts and it is revealed that the sweet girl who was swapping stories with all of our main characters is actually a killer. Was actually, to go off script again, there is a third reason why I think Susie being there is really good, and it's because recently Legion had a graphic novel series come out, so Susie is actually one of the most developed characters in all of Dead by Daylight, so her being adapted to the movie would be pretty easy, while with other characters you would have to invent a lot to make them work. To elaborate on one of those ideas, I think the film should be in 3 acts, with the first 2 acts being about the 4 main survivors, plus Susie, swapping stories and cutting between the campfire and the events they are recounting. To kind of give you an example of what I'm thinking of, imagine the first Saw film where you get Lawrence Gordon and Adam sitting in the bathroom talking, and then it cuts between their flashbacks, sort of like that. So, anyway, at the end of Act 2, we get the twist that Susie is actually the killer in the next trial, and she was just sitting at the campfire to kind of toy with them. So, this cute little girl sitting there the whole time was a killer. Then, all of that leads into Act 3, which is kind of the big set piece of the movie, which is the trial, which is basically a film version of what you would do in the games, where repairing generators, trying to survive. You get the idea, basically a film adaptation of what we do in the game. However, it doesn't go very well, and Susie slowly kills all 4 of them, with a Maury thrown in at the end for a fun little reference. And then, after every main character has been killed except Susie, we see them wake up at the campfire, just like the start of the film, with no memory of the trial that they had just went through. So, the 4 survivors sit around and begin discussing things that they had before, like how they got there, trials that they remember, and killers that they have faced. The idea for everything there in the finale is playing into what I feel is the scariest part of DBD, the idea that these people exist in a perpetual state of torment, for the sick sadistic entertainment of an evil entity. I know that my idea for what I think would make a good Dead by Daylight movie would not make everyone happy, but I don't think that's what Blumhouse or Behavior should be going for when it comes to making the Dead by Daylight film. Believe me, I more than anyone would love to see my favorite characters featured, but with as many characters that there are in Dead by Daylight, I don't think we're gonna get that. I know that the idea of seeing as many of your favorite characters on screen seems like a good idea, but for a good movie, I feel like Behavior should avoid that sort of trap, because that's not what makes a good story. To make the best possible film, I do genuinely think that Behavior and Blumhouse should focus on a small core group of characters with maybe some cameos from other characters, but just that, cameos and cool sequences. My idea is just one idea of how they could keep the story focused on a core group of characters, which is, in my opinion, the way the story should go. There are probably other variations of characters that are in the circle around the campfire that would maybe work better, but I personally would just think that having a killer there like Susie would be kind of cool. Now, obviously, I am a fan of the Saw franchise, so I love a good twist. The Dead by Daylight movie does not have to have a twist, and in fact, they might be better served to just showing off as many killers as possible. My idea for what the movie should be would only really work if they do have this twist where a killer is talking with them the whole time. But that doesn't have to be what the film goes for, and maybe it shouldn't be. I guess to squeeze one last idea out of this, I could see a world where the movie is just the survivors sitting around the campfire, sharing the stories of past trials, and then saying that last final trial in the third act. I think that would be about as good a movie too. I just think that the little pizzazz of having a fun twist would be the best option, at least for me as a fan of twists like that. But yeah, to close out the video, I would like to see everything I have talked about in some shape or form be discussed among the community a bit more, because no one's really talking about the movie. But anyway, I took the initiative and decided to talk about it myself. End of the week, end of the video. This one is pretty short after the last one, I know, but I wanted to get one in before I had my plans this week. So, yep, consider this sort of my Halloween special episode of my YouTube channel, because I don't think I'll have a video out on Halloween. I have a lot going on over this next week, so this video was made kind of so that I wouldn't have to edit too much. There probably isn't going to be that much editing outside of some music. And last but not least, don't forget to like and subscribe, and you too can become a member of the Harper Nation. I will see all of y'all next week.